What's up? We're back. I didn't plan anything today, believe it or not, but I did find an essay that I wrote like last semester. I took a philosophy course on race and gender, and I'm about to read you my race paper. It is titled. Can you see that? Tex-Mex Whiteness: the amalgamation of Hispanic or Latinxes into white culture. This is a This is an opinion that I think is valid. Let's start with the introduction. President Donald J. Trump wanted a Great Wall on the southern border. President Donald J. Trump wanted a Great Wall on the southern border of the United States. Many were for and many were against it. The states who owned some of the borders are the states with the higher Hispanic populations. Texans in particular strongly wanted the wall. Texas has a very high Hispanic population in many of its cities. Texas is also home to the military wives who went into Mexico for vacation and were served the first nachos. Tex-Mex food is serious business. Not only is it held to a high standard, it is also a business that helps the economy. Opening a taco restaurant is a safe gamble in an unsaturated market. It would make sense to open a Tex-Mex place outside of Texas. The people who work at these restaurants are respected by the white community, which is easily seen by looking at the people sitting at the tables. Now imagine a cafeteria in an elementary school. Many Hispanics go to this school, but they are still a minority. One Hispanic student is the child of two Hispanics that are the local restaurant owners. Another Hispanic student is the child of a white doctor and at the local hospital and a Hispanic stay-at-home mother. The first student is not as respected as the second student. The second student has a parent with a white job and probably does other things with the other children of doctors. The first student might have to work at the family restaurant and might have to serve their peers, putting the first student lower than them. Here, this is hypothetical, but to some, it is a reality. To make it clear, Hispanics offer more than cuisine, but cuisine is a part of any culture. There is a distinction between sharing culture and having culture taken. It seems that Hispanics are happy to share their culture with the white people. Quinceañeras and Sweet Sixteens are basically the same thing, just a year apart. Jennifer Lopez and Shakira recently did the Super Bowl halftime show in Spanish for white public, and many enjoyed the performance. Also, soccer has roots in Spanish-speaking countries, so soccer is Hispanic. Europeans love soccer, and Europeans are white, so clearly Hispanic culture has been accepted by white people. Here's the central dispute. Two ongoing debates in race theory are the concept of race and racism. While racisms are closely tied to races, this paper tries to distinguish races within a race. That is, this paper will shine a light on the distinctions within the Hispanic community and the consequences that Tex-Mex whites or white Hispanics have on the community as a whole. The whites are blissfully aware of their privilege. The whites are blissfully unaware of their privilege and culture. Through racism, ethnocentrism, and xenophobia, white people maintain their position of power and high social status. By labeling someone who crossed a border without telling anyone as illegal, even without knowing the race of the person, gives that person a sense of foreignness. There are policies in place that discourage low-income individuals from procreating. With less money in the district, education falls, safety seemingly falls, property values fall, and even marriage seems to fail more often. The image of a person has of their self is easily changed in some and more rigid in others. However, material conditions surrounding the formation of the self provide a notion of identity policy. It is wrong for a group to be opposed, but grouping the individuals into a lump is also oppressive. Being in a marginalized group does not excuse an individual's racisms. Otherwise, only a white person could be racist. Respectful race relations are racial, not racist. It is the disrespect that grows through the racial relation that makes it racist. However, labeling an individual as a racist is unfair usually. There are many considerations like biases and beliefs that must be accounted for. There must be a distinction between an implicit racist and an explicit racist. Also, the distinction must be made between racial and racist. Now, white Hispanics and undocumented immigrants. There are many states where Hispanics or Latinxes are a part of the minority. White people have the majority like they always have. However, there was a time when a group that is white today was not white at all. The Italians are a good example because they established the word ghetto from their word for foundry or borough. Italian immigrants lived in ghettos, which evolved into referring to a low-income household as a ghetto house. It would be unjust to talk about Italians without mentioning their mafia. The Italian-American criminal organization's popularity is seen in the success of the movies it inspired. White people really like the Italian-American mafia. It is no secret that white people like their endless soup, salad, and breadsticks from Olive Garden, an Italian restaurant. Obviously, Olive Garden is not the best representation of Italian cuisine, and the mafia is only a small part of Italian culture. However, both have origins in Italian history. Italians, as a group, were given white status because they started making social advancements and helped the economy along the way. Today in states like Florida, California, and Texas, there is a steady rise in the Hispanic Latinx population. In many cities, they are the majority minority. In certain cities, they occupy the majority. The best example is probably San Antonio, Texas, with Hispanics making up over half the population. Many San Antonians think that it is more appropriate to order in Spanish at certain restaurants. This is because the employees of the restaurants cannot or just do not want to speak English. Luckily for the non-Spanish speaking population, some restaurants have implemented a system where the customers can order by holding up the number on the menu. Obviously, special ordering is easier with verbal communication, so the majority race has some privilege because it is excluding the minority. It is important to note that in many cities throughout the United States, Hispanics are often a part of the minority. However, these Hispanics are immediately divided into two groups by white eyes, documented and undocumented. This division into groups is harmful to the group as a whole. It forces members of the same community to feel disconnected, and it gives one group higher status over the other. Being able to show a government worker documentation provides a sense of safety, so the opposite provides the opposite effect. Having to lie on numerous documents to get jobs or houses comes with a sense of fear. Fear as the consequence of actions that the person is unable to control is an unjust and immoral tool used by white people, people with a higher social status, to hold on to their power. Therefore, the documented Hispanics and white Hispanics, or Tex-Mex white people, are a group of white people trying to hold on to their power. The United States Census separates Hispanics and Latinx from the other options for races. Question 5 asks, is this person of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? And question 6 asks, what is this person's race? This is strange at first, because a Hispanic cannot answer question 6 honestly. They are forced to assign themselves as white, black, American Indian, Asian Indian, Chinese, Filipino, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Native Hawaiian, Womanian, Somalian, or other. A Hispanic from Europe could be white. A South American or Central American Hispanic could claim to be an American Indian if they had tribal affiliation or community attachment. A Hispanic from Mexico has to claim to be one of the other races and write in their race. How is a race not a race? A race is not a race when it is an ethnicity. According to the United States Census, Hispanic is just an ethnicity. There are more people identifying as white Hispanic than just Hispanic. These people could be descendants of both a white person and a Hispanic person, or they could be a Hispanic person who did not know their race. Way back when, during Jim Crow times, these white Hispanics would not be able to say they were white. Now, government is allowing minor amalgamation between races, because these people can look white more easily than people born to a white parent and a black parent. More importantly, white Hispanics are contributing more to the economy. They are documented, so they get taxed. Moreover, white Hispanics are contributing to society by instituting Margarita Mondays and Taco Tuesdays. Because white people are benefited or amused, the white Hispanic or Tex-Mex white person gets to say that they are white. Because the undocumented Hispanic is not being taxed as often and is labeled undocumented, white people see them as a detriment. A low-income Hispanic household is not necessarily an undocumented household, but are treated as with the same lack of respect. In fact, any low-income household faces challenges that other households could never understand. Some people think it is the government's responsibility to help them, while others think it is the breadwinner's responsibility to carry their family out of poverty. Switching hands. Both sides should agree that the low-income lifestyle is full of hardships. These hardships are set in place by past governing bodies, society's view on struggle, and the other group's harmful interactions. Low-income households and the low-income Hispanics cannot be given white status because white people are not benefiting from them. Some even believe that low-income households hurt society because the financial burden needs to be carried by either society or a person unfit to be financially successful in white eyes. Obviously, the majority of the United States population is white. The majority of them only claim one race. With an individual claim two races, white was almost always one of the options. Between 200 and 2010, over half the total population growth of the United States was accredited to the increase in the Hispanic population. Each decade, more states are reporting a majority-minority, so most of their population was not white. Even more states are getting close to the majority-minority population. As white people approach becoming a minority, they look for ways to increase their numbers. While white baby making is certainly an option, it would be easier to just accept a group as a part of white culture because the numbers are raised faster. Conclusion. White people think that they can alter the definition of whiteness so that the majority of the population is white. Italians, for example. The race relation between white Hispanics and white people is different than the race relations between non-white Hispanics and white people. The white Hispanics, given white status by the government through the census, should use the status to help the rest of their group. However, white Hispanics do not see themselves as a part of the same group as non-white Hispanics. Therefore, it would be fair to say that white Hispanics or Tex-Mex white people, viewing themselves as white, are disrespecting non-white Hispanics by not extending their race relation. Because of this marginalization, white Hispanics are going to be lumped in with the middle-class white people because their races are not distinct enough to provide a power dynamic, but they're of the same tax bracket. This leaves low-income and undocumented Hispanics as their own group, within the larger group of people of color. As a son of a documented immigrant from El Salvador and native Arkansan, I never believed I was fully white or Hispanic. Now, as a white Hispanic or Tex-Mex white person, I recognize that I have the same privilege that more and more Americans are claiming. Because I look white in a group, I am white. Because I look Hispanic in a different group, I am Hispanic. When allowed to claim both races, I will. When I am forced to choose, I claim my whiteness. In this upcoming census, I'm concerned to see the documented or undocumented question, because I know it is just going to divide my mother's group even further. It offers an excuse to marginalize a group of people. In the same way, marrying an American grants citizenship to the non-American, marrying a white person grants whiteness to the non-white person, or to a non-white child at